Hi folks, and welcome back to the channel. And in the previous episode we painted the cap of Old Rusty in epoxy. Now it's time to prepare it for its high build surfacer. We have different areas on this cap that we will have to treat separately now to make it smooth, and that's why I have a whole raft of products right in front of me. Now, I'm not making a commercial for any of these products, but I've been using those products for a while now and I know what they can do. I'm sure there's other products on the market, but we'll walk through that and I'll show you how I will use this. The products that we will be using for the different areas are polyester putties, light ones and harder ones. We'll be using some elastic beads that we can spray afterwards for gaps in between panels. I also will be using some polyester spray for areas that are lightly corroded, but I can't use any of those putties. And I have a LUT replacement kind of product that is going to replace filling areas you normally would fill with lead. And then finally we will have a fine putty to remove all the little uneven areas. Here I have two panels that we welded together, and now we have to smoothen that whole area up. And for that I will be using a polyester putty to apply that to the surface. In other areas we have two panels that come together and there is a gap in between the panels, and that gap we're going to fill up with an elastic bead. So this is the product I will use for that. And then I will just fill it up like this. And in other areas we have small little holes that showed up after abrasive blasting, and if they were a non-supportive area then it's not worthwhile cutting it out or filling it up with real lead. For those I'm going to use a LUT replacement product, which is really good. I've used it before and this stuff is as good as real lead. Now of course it's up to you if you want to do it with real lead. I've done some real lead on this cap before, but not in these little areas. In some places I have metal that looks now a bit like the skin of an orange, very uneven. And for those areas I will use a sprayable polyester. For that you're going to need an air gun and a pretty wide nozzle of 2.5 mil. So let's start with applying some polyester putty onto the areas where we've welded the panels together. The first thing we're going to do is to roughen up the epoxy. And epoxy is a great coat because you can actually apply putties straight onto epoxy, but you need to roughen it up a bit. For that I'm going to use some abrasive paper, probably about a 240 or 300. So the first thing I'm going to do right now is to roughen up the area with a abrasive paper of 220. If you're going to mix polyester, make sure you have a clean surface, make sure you have a clean spattle to apply it onto the bodywork of the car, and use another spattle to bring the polyester on your paper or your mixing pad. And of course you're going to need hardener, and that one is always good to squeeze the tube a bit because it tends to dissolve or whatever you want to call it, and if you squeeze it a bit you can massage it so it really mixes well inside. So let's get some of this black stuff. Here it is. And don't use too much in one go because this stuff dries very fast. And apply a bead of the hardener. There we go. The only reason this is red, guys, is to see that you're able to mix it well. Right? So, and now it's a matter of mixing it. I need to mix it very well, because otherwise you will have spots that won't dry, and that's something you don't want to have. It all depends a bit on how warm it is where you work. If it's a real hot area then it's going to dry real fast. I think it's about ready to be applied. Let me move this out of the way a bit, and I'm just gonna apply it like that. And don't put too much on either, because everything you put on too much you will have to sand off later. Okay, so that's something to remember. All right. And over here we have two panels that are joined together with a gap in between. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to fill that up with an elastic bead, and I will tape it up first so I don't spill too much of that stuff. So let's tape it. Now that elastic bead is paintable. That looks good. So now we're going to degrease that a bit before we apply the bead. All right, and now we just level that out. Remove the tape. In areas where the panels are overlaid to each other and we have not a full seam, but we have kind of dot welded the panels together, I'm going to apply an elastic seam. This whole area is not visible anyway, so there is no issue. For that, we're going to mask it off because I don't want to have the elastic bead spilled all over the place. And we'll mask as well the inner side. And this area here is actually covered once the truck is reassembled, because there is going to be a support beam here in wood protecting the cabin from the load. So let's apply the bead. And now we're just going to wipe it down. And now I'm going to use a brush to get this brushed effect on it. And all what's left now is to peel it back off. And that's it. So this looks quite nice, and again it's going to be hidden once the cabin is on the chassis of the truck. So here I have the LUT Replacement putty, and I'm going to prepare it now, and then we will apply it to these gaps and little openings that we have in the cabin of old Rusty. This is pretty good stuff, and it dries fast as well. And again, like always, you really have to mix it well. So I'm going to let it dry, then we sand it down, and then I'm going to put some more polyester putty on it to make it really smooth and even. Yeah, that's a lot of sanding. This is the first coat that we applied. It's dry now, so now I'm going to use a grit 150 to sand it. And it's rough work, but that's good enough for now, so at least I can feel where I have the uneven areas. And I will put some more up. You can use a sander if you want. The best tool to see how flat and where you have the uneven areas are your hands, and you just close your eyes and you just go over it, and you shouldn't be feeling it. So I can feel here still a dent. So that will have to be filled up, but I might take a bit off first here. Yeah. Right, so I'm going to continue sanding this down, guys. The LUT replacement has now settled and it feels very hard. I even tried it with a screwdriver to stick into it. Really good stuff. I already sanded it down a bit, so now the next thing we're going to do is to apply some polyester on top of that to make it real smooth. And to do so, I did cut a little piece of plastic that will just fit in the corner and I can drag it along like this. I like to scrape off the stuff which is too much, but for a first run that will be good enough. Then we're going to sand it and then we do a second run. So we sanded down this area and I feel a little dent here and I also have a little dent here. So now we're going to apply a second coat. Okay, so let's apply it, the dent and the dent. I think that looks quite alright, so let's put some more up here just to be on the safe side. I think I'm getting pretty close, and a good test is to make this wet and then use a light source like this LED source here, which is a long strip, and just go over it and you look in the reflection, and if you see that reflection deforming, then you know that you have a bit of a bump or a dent. And I think I have here a little bit of one, and you can go in different directions. So let me dry this up and apply my last coat on that. The next thing I'm going to do is to spray the cabin with liquid polyester, and here I have that one. So I have to dilute it with the hardener, and then I can use my airbrush or my air gun to paint it. But I have to change the nozzle because you have to paint this with at least 2.4 mil. This is a 1.4, that's not good enough. I need to get 2.5. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can actually spray it on, and you've seen me spraying it, but it is as easy with a brush. A very easy way to deal with the orange skin. Got a hair in it. Cheap brush, guys, sorry. You don't want to use expensive brushes for this because you've got to throw it away afterwards, no matter what. This is the other way you can actually apply this liquid polyester with a brush. You don't need to get an expensive brush or an expensive paint gun for that. It just works fine with a very cheap and ordinary brush. Point is, I want to cover up all the unevenness, and then we can sand it down. I tried to put a bit more up here, if we can.